You're welcome to Chapter 9, Trade Secrets, Trademarks, and Copyrights, taken from our main topic, Technology Strategy for Managers and Entrepreneurs. Today's learning objectives identify the role that secrecy plays in protecting intellectual property. It explains when secrecy tends to be an effective mechanism for deterring imitation. It defines a trade secret. It explains why non-disclosure agreements are an important part of efforts to maintain trade secrecy. It defines a copyright. It describes how a copyright is obtained. It defines a trademark. It describes how a trademark is obtained, and it also explains the major differences in intellectual property across countries and their effects on technology strategy. Secrecy. Prevention of imitation can be obtained by keeping things secret and reducing the diffusion of information about products or services or how they are produced. When does secrecy work? Secrecy works when there are few sources of information about the new product or service. Secrecy works when a new product or service is complex. It works when the process of creating a new product or service is poorly understood. Secrecy works when the information that is being kept secret involves implicit knowledge, such as the knowledge about how to do something that is not documented in written form. Secrecy works when there are limited numbers of people capable of understanding the information that is being kept secret. Secrecy also works better for processes, inputs, and materials than observable in-use products. Trade secrets. Trade secrecy is a special case of all efforts to keep a new product or service secret. Trade secrecy laws provide legal remedies if someone benefits from one's trade secret without consent. Conditions to have a trade secret. 3 conditions must be met for the courts to hold that something is trade secret. Number 1 is that the information must be known only by people in the company. Number 2 is that the information must have economic value. And finally, number 3 is that reasonable measures must be taken to keep the information secret. Secrecy as a strategy. Secrecy is a wise course of action as it offers a longer time horizon of protection and does not disclose information to competitors. It is beneficial if the product is well suited for secrecy. It generates customer interest because people are more interested in things that they can't know about than things that they can. It requires the adoption of secrecy policies. It delays the efforts to work with other companies. It restricts efforts to sell products to many business customers who need to know about new products long in advance of their release to fit them into their own plans. And finally, the secrecy strategy risks the independent discovery and exploitation of the inventions. Trade secrets versus patents. Looking at the table, we can see when trade secrets are better on the left, and we can also see when patents are better on the right. Starting with trade secrets. Trade secrets are better when the secret cannot be patented, while patents are better when reverse engineering is possible. Trade secrets are better when the product cycle is short, whereas patents are better when the market life of a product is close to 20 years. Trade secrets are better when patent will be hard to enforce, whereas patents are better when patent is easy to enforce. Trade secrets are better when patent will be narrow, whereas patents are better when the patent will be brought. And finally, trade secrets are better when it is hard to identify a trade secret, whereas patents are better when it is easy to identify a trade secret. Non-disclosure agreements. Trade secrecy is enhanced by having employees sign a legal document called a non-disclosure agreement that must specify precisely what information is to be kept secret, that must provide consideration such as employees must receive something of value like their salaries in return for non-disclosure, must specify legitimate use for the information, and specify what must be done with any documents, materials transferred to the employee both during and after the termination of an employment relationship. Enforcing non-disclosure agreements. Many companies are willing to sue the employees and others who help them because legal action is the only remedy for violating non-disclosure agreements. Non-complete agreements. Trade secrecy is enhanced by having the employees sign non-complete agreements which bar them from working for competitors for a period of time after their employment has ended. Enforcing non-complete agreements. Non-complete agreements help to protect the company's intellectual property, but they are hard to enforce. As a result, there is need to be of limited length and geographic breadth because they will be declared invalid if they keep people from earning a living in their chosen field. Non-disclosure / non-complete agreements. The sample agreement, as we can see, contains the date and how it will be governed by the two companies, the terms of the agreements, including their rights and witnesses. Ownership of intellectual property. Employees own the rights to technologies they develop while working for a company unless the employer forces them to transfer such rights. Copyrights. Copyrights allow the creators of original works the freedom to share, produce, and offer derivative creations while restricting others from doing the same. What can be copyrighted? A variety of things can be copyrighted, such as literary works, dramatic works, audio and video recordings, computer software, but works composed of common property cannot be copyrighted, along with intangible things, titles, names and slogans, ideas, methods, and principles. Who gets a copyright and how do they get it? A copyright can be obtained by the author of any completed original artistic, literary, or musical work. Unless the work is done for hire, then the copyright goes to the entity commissioning the work. Copyrights can be authorized by putting the work into tangible form or by registering the work at the USPTO. This is because registration provides the right to sue for copyright infringement. Enforcement through litigation. Courts usually conclude that copyright has occurred if the new work is substantially similar to the copyrighted work and the defendant had access to the copyrighted work. The statute of limitations on copyrights only lasts for 3 years. A copyright application form. Here is a sample of a copyright application form. Please read through the notes and study them thoroughly. Recent developments to strengthen copyrights. File sharing software poses an essential threat to copyright on recorded music, and its rise has led to several infringement lawsuits. Recent laws have strengthened the position of copyright holders by allowing them to use physical tools to prevent duplication of their work. However, these physical tools have had problematic side effects. Fair use. The fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies or phonorecords or by any other means specified by that section for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, which includes multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship or research, is not an infringement of copyright. In determining whether the use of a work in any particular case is a fair use, the factors that must be considered must include: number one, the purpose and character of the use, including whether such is of a commercial nature or for non-profit educational purpose. Number two, considerations shall include the nature of the copyrighted work. Number three, the whole amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. And number four is the effect of the use upon the potential market or value of the copyrighted work. The fact that a work is unpublished shall not itself bar a finding of fair use if such a finding is made upon consideration of all the above factors. Software copyrights. Copyrights can be used to protect the source code, subject code, microcode, and screen displays in software, but not the ideas, mathematical formulas, or equations behind them, because it is impossible to show the exact link between the expression of an idea and the process underlying it. Courts interpret the look and feel of software to evaluate infringements. Copyrights are much easier to obtain than patents and are a much less expensive protection. Copyrights offer 70 years of protection from the time of author's death, while patents offer only 20 years of protection from the time of innovation. Trademarks. Trademarks are devices to identify the provider of a product or service. Trademarks offer much less intellectual property protection than patents, copyrights, or trade secrets. It also helps companies to protect their brand names. What can be trademarked? Trademarks can be obtained on any non-descriptive, non-generic word, number, symbol, phrase, color design, or even smell that distinguishes the products and services of one company from those of another. The same mark can be used by more than one company if that use will not confuse customers about the provider's identity and does not dilute the value of another party's trademark. Obtaining a trademark. One can obtain a US trademark by using the mark or by registering it with the USPTO. Registration facilitates the ability to obtain similar rights in other countries and allow the inventor to file a lawsuit to enforce the mark. Many companies obtain a large number of trademarks. As we can see on the list, here are some numbers of companies that obtained a large number of trademarks. Number one is Mathematical Assistant. We have Enlight, we have AOS, we have APD, we have Automatic Power Down, we have Avigo, we have BA2 Plus, we have BA Real Estate, we have Calculator Based Laboratory, we have CBL, we have CBL2, we have Calculator Based Ranger, and so on. Enforcing a trademark. Trademarks provide a negative right and must be enforced through legal action, which is often more difficult for startups to undertake than for established companies to conduct. Trademarks are lost through cancellation proceedings, they are lost through abandonment, and they are lost if they take on generic meaning. Domain names. Domain names are names used on websites to identify an organization providing a good or service. These names are protected through legal action. Use of domain names. As we can see in the chart, the use of domain names barely started in 1993, and there were no significant increases until 1998. The number increased to over 25 million in 2001, and by 2006, it had grown up to 55 million users. International issues in intellectual property. There is no such thing as intellectual copyrights, trademarks, or patents. These forms of intellectual property protection must be obtained in each country where a company wants such protection. Top 20 countries for patent applications. Looking at the y-axis on the left, we can see the patent offices, and the x-axis on the bottom we can see the number of filings. Japan, being the first, has over 400,000 filings. USA, being the second, has over 350,000 filings. Korea, being the third, has over 100,000 filings. China, as the fourth, also had over 100,000 filing. European Patent Office also had over 100,000 filings. Germany Patent Office has over 50,000 filing, and so on. Differences in intellectual property regimes. Major differences exist across countries in laws governing patenting, including whether they award patents to the first to invent or the first to file their policies on the timing of disclosure and their requirements to manufacture. First to invent. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that awards a patent to the first person to invent a technology. In this case, they must prove that the technology was invented before anyone else. Disclosure. The United States allow inventors to publish information about an invention up to 1 year before applying for patent eligibility. Prior publication will prevent inventors from getting a patent in many European countries and Japan at any time. Requirements to manufacture. The United States does not require that an inventor actually produce a product or service that uses the patented invention within the country. In many countries, one may obtain patent protection only if one is willing to manufacture the product in that country. Intellectual property in developing countries. Developing country governments often do not enforce intellectual property laws vigorously because companies in those countries generate little value from intellectual property, and because weak intellectual property laws reduce the cost of many products. Weak intellectual property laws in developing countries leads to widespread piracy and requires companies to formulate strategies that are effective under such conditions. International agreements on intellectual property. Several international agreements makes it easier to obtain intellectual property protection in multiple countries. The most important of these agreements are: number 1 is the Berne Convention, the Madrid Protection, the European Patent Convention, the Paris Convention, the Patent Cooperation Treaty, and finally, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights agreements. We have now come to the end of the 9th chapter. Continue to create inspiring technologies and see you in the next lecture.